Welcome to Massive Passive Cash Flow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Hello, welcome to the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. I'm Gary Wilson, your host. We're glad to see you back again. Hey, if you haven't done so, if you wouldn't mind doing so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. It's on 30 different channels, Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, you name it. And while you're out there, go visit globalinvestoragent.com. Okay, this is where you'll find real estate agents who are actually trained to work with you and I, the investors, okay? Residential and commercial, and they know how to identify, analyze, and negotiate properties on our behalf. And if you are an agent, by the way, boy, click on the Learn More button, because now is a perfect time to figure out how are you going to not just survive, but thrive in this changing market. And it's not hard. It just takes work. And it starts with you clicking on that Learn More button and find out what it's all about, and we'll teach you. So, okay. Hey, without further ado, we got a great guest today, Amy Sylvis, all the way from beautiful California. So, Amy, first of all, thank you very much for doing this. I've looked at your portfolio and bio. I know we've spoken, and I'm just really impressed that you took your precious time to be with us today,
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. I am so delighted to be here. This is such an amazing thing that you have set up here. And I know we're both like-minded and really eager to add as much value as we can to your listeners.
You got it. Hey, let's start off by, how did you get to where you are now, including, where you are in beautiful, Tournament of Roses, Pasadena, and in the business. I mean, people really want to learn more about you,
My pleasure. Yes. So as you mentioned, my name is Amy Sylvis. I have an amazing husband named Joel. He and I met in high school long time ago and live here in Los Angeles. Both of our families are native to Los Angeles. So we had the good fortune of being able to live near them. We're very family oriented. So we're really excited to be around them and extended family. And yes, I am a real estate investor, as you mentioned, alongside with my passive investors. It was quite a long journey getting to this point, so we can get into it. But essentially, I needed to, not by desire, but by necessity, figure out a way to not trade my time for money because of a health issue I was born with. So that set me off on a 10 plus year journey looking to get into passively and actively investing in multifamily real estate.
Okay. So you started off, I mean, the proverbial 800-pound gorilla in your back. It sounds like you did what most people do, take for granted, doing on a regular basis. You did it by carrying quite a weight. If you don't mind sharing, I mean, unless it's something really sensitive. I mean, everybody, I love your story. I love what you read about you. So if you're willing to share, that'd be great.
Of course, absolutely. So I was born back in 1981. I'm 41 years old, with a genetic illness called cystic fibrosis. And I find most people have heard about that, but don't really exactly know what that means. So essentially, I was born with knowing that my lungs were going to deteriorate pretty rapidly over time. And I'd have to be in the hospital for weeks and weeks on end, treating virulent pneumonia several times a year. So when I was diagnosed at 6 months old, my parents were told I'd maybe live to be 8 or 9 years old at the most. Wow. So I always knew, even if I was alive, even if I beat those odds, that being in and out of the hospital and being so sick would likely prevent me from living the life that I wanted. Forget vacations and, things like that. Just the ability to work and hold down a job might be very difficult. So I love talking about my age and mentioning that I'm 41 because I was able to beat the odds, but it's been a journey.
Yeah. Well, you look great. I mean, consider what you've been through, and you look healthy and vibrant. So congratulations, and thanks for sharing that, because it just goes to show you, life can beat you down. I mean, this stuff flat tires, children get sick, parents fall, and it just it goes on and on. Like that will never ever stop, right? And others are challenged with the cross to bear, just like you have right from the start. And the thing is, this is just my opinion, but because you started off life that way, it's not like you had another paradigm to compare against. That was your paradigm, and so you've lived your life having to do things with that weight on your back, where other people do things without the weight on their back. But for you, that was your normal. So other challenges Not that they're easy. I mean, nobody likes getting a flat tire or a blowout worse yet. What happens is quite scary. But I'm pretty sure the way you are in your mindset is, you know what, you realize you accept it as just another challenge along the path of life, and you deal with it and move on. There's much bigger things that we can spend our time on, constructively or not. So anyway, sorry to ramble. I really admire you for sharing that first off. And I really want to, so now let's dig into the, where you are now, because this even makes it more compelling knowing where you came from, so kind of fill us in. You're into investing, and I'm sure you started off like a lot of people. Maybe you didn't, maybe you took on your own 800-pound gorilla, like a 90-unit building or something. I don't know. But by the way, the reason I said it is one of my good friends, Andy Cushman, is not far from me. He's a huge surfer engineer, and his first purchase was like a 94-unit building. I'm like, how did Andy? Most people start off with a duplex. You went for like the 94 units. How did you do that mentally? But kind of fill us in. What was your first purchase? And let's go from there,
Sure. So I was actually a passive investor for a number of years prior to purchasing my own active deals. Living in Los Angeles, things aren't cheap here, and it's not easy to get things to cash flow. So like actually many of my investors who invest alongside me right now that live in California, I was really looking for a market that was a bit more business friendly, that had more economic as well as demographic growth, net migration. So I was a passive investor for a number of years. And then I got this miracle medication that actually changed my health and allowed me to buy my first and operate my first multifamily property, which was actually a 58-unit apartment complex in Tennessee. Yes. So not quite 90 units, but it was 58. And it was an incredible experience, life-changing.
Yeah. Well, 58 units, that's nothing to sneeze at. You're a player, 50 units and above, that's the game. But you mentioned you really didn't, you invested passively first. Was that through lending or through syndication, or what did that actually look like?
Yes. So I actually invested in other people's syndications. I was really eager to understand the space and learn from others, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Luckily, it was a very good experience. But, if I was going to be a syndicator myself, be a good steward of other people's capital, I wanted to get on the job learning. And I thought, what a great way to do it by passively investing in other syndications for a bit.
Oh, cool. Okay. All right. So then you got the 58 unit in Tennessee. So you actually did two things. Not only did you invest in something that's, I would consider a sizable investment, 58 units, but you also did it out of town. You didn't buy in California. And I know what you're saying. The area, LA County is giant. It's probably the largest county land-wise in the country. It covers so much territory. And population-wise, you're looking at 10 million people. Now, I know as you go out, and we mentioned some of these towns earlier, like Temecula, but if you go north, from Pasadena, if you get up over the mountain range and you end up in a place called Palmdale, I think is a town.
Yes.
Up there is a great air base up there. Yep.
Yes.
And then down near Long Beach, there's a little place, I think it's called San Pedro, that started taking off years ago. But other than that, it's difficult. I mean, you can't, even in Long Beach, which isn't the most pricey place on the planet as far as, beach areas go around LA, it's still a lot. I mean, you're looking at, $3-4 million, for maybe 15 or 20 units. Tennessee, you probably got the whole 58 units for less than that,
You're spot on. And, LA County, people are still surprised to hear we still have eviction moratoriums in place due to COVID.
Whoa.
Yes. So there are a number and the whole state has rent control now. So many factors as to why it just wasn't ideal, but Tennessee was a great bet.
Yeah. Well, tell us more about you're participating in other people's syndications. Now, is that something you've carried forward, and do you still do that as well as direct investing? Or, I know a lot of people are listening now, that a lot of them, business owners, they're busy. They're just busy, but they want to deploy their assets, even professionals that are traveling, and they just don't have the time. So is that a better option, or do you have between the two, for someone who already owns a business, would you recommend syndication versus direct ownership, or fill us in what your thoughts are there,
I love that question. And to your point, I think the answer really is dependent upon people's life circumstances and their goals. So many of my investors who invest alongside me now are folks that are highly successful business owners. they love enjoying their family, their hobbies, and giving back to their community. So investing and owning and operating a property like I do on a day-to-day basis would be creating a whole other job for them. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. For some people, that's helpful. But for my investors, they really appreciate being able to, utilize my expertise, my experience, my market research, and of course, my time, and invest passively. So they just, their only job is cashing those checks every quarter.
Yeah. Yep. You got it. Now, how did you find the syndications, the ones that you invested in passively? I mean, was it just going to local investor groups and meeting people, or did you find stuff online, or how did you actually identify those and even determine which are the good ones?
Yes, a lot of networking. And to your point, I really look at who the people are, who the jockeys are, if you will, of the horses when I passively invest. So getting to know folks at local events, at even some national networking events for people that are in this space, and understanding, what's their track record, what are their values, what are they looking to accomplish, and that really helped me start off to get to know where should I deploy my capital. So that was very, very helpful.
Okay, good. All right, tell you what, let's talk about geography. So we talked about California, we talked about Tennessee, and by the way, everybody hears about Texas and Florida. They're giant states with giant populations that keep growing. But what do people don't realize is Tennessee, with its little population, is actually the fastest growing state in the country, person per person. That literally is per capita. I mean, little towns like Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg, we used to only hear about on Hee Haw, stuff like. Now they're like thriving, growing. They're smaller towns and cities, but they're growing like crazy. And in your opinion, I hate to put you on. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but through your research, are there other areas of the country geographically you think, Tennessee obviously is a great one. Maybe we shouldn't mention the other. Maybe we should keep a secret. What do you think?
I have an abundance mentality. I'm happy to share. There's more than enough for everybody. So, and market research is something I love. So be careful if you get me talking, because I can go on for ages about it. But yeah, an area that I think, especially folks maybe on the coasts or maybe in larger states, haven't taken a look at, but I would encourage them to, is Huntsville, Alabama, northern Alabama. And I think folks think Alabama, okay, maybe you have some preconceived notions, and that's fair. But let me tell you about Huntsville, the new branch of the United States military called the Space Force. You may have heard of that. Is locating from Denver to Huntsville, Alabama. Whoa. Massive, massive job growth. And not just any job growth, stable military job growth that can be sometimes recession resistant. The FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, moving 8,000 jobs to the small town of Huntsville, Alabama. And that doesn't include all the other automobile manufacturing from Mazda. And the city actually has one of the highest STEM degree holders. So science, technology, engineering per capita of almost any other area in the country. So northern Alabama is growing, is quite cosmopolitan, and maybe challenging a lot of our views of what's going on in Alabama.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I've taught there in Huntsville. There's another town to the west called Madison. But Huntsville, we used to call that the Pentagon of the South. And people don't realize this. When it comes to NASA, you've heard of Houston, right? You've heard of Cape Canaveral and Langley Air Force Base. And I interned at NASA years ago when I was in college. And but in case Huntsville did work on the NASA through NASA, the NASA projects, rocket testing and so forth. A huge military base, and the rest of Alabama guys. And you mentioned automobiles, and Hoover is a Mercedes plant. Giant Mercedes plant, Yes. So it really is. I mean, I know what you see on history and old movies and stuff like, but believe me, I agree with you. I mean, it's probably one of the sleeper places, and particularly Huntsville. I mean, let's talk about the pricing in Huntsville. How's the pricing in Huntsville relative to, say, like what you're experiencing in LA? Like is it like half? Is it a fourth? I mean, for the same kind of property?
Yeah, I would say about a fifth. It really is pretty mind-blowing. Yes. It just really, but and it's a growing area, unlike, something like Los Angeles where we're losing population. So it is really a win-win there.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love you sharing that. Now, how about timing? I'm going to probably timestamp this podcast here by saying, we've already had, I think, 3 rate increases from the Fed. 2 in June, July. I think there were 2. There was another one late September, and they just announced. And we already knew they were going to announce 1 or 2 more, but they're telling us, guys. Let me tell you, the Fed, they're accountants. They don't know how to like BS and play politics. They tell it like it is in their own way. It's a subtle way of saying, we believe we may need another rate hike. Translation is, we're going to have a rate hike.
Yes.
It's a mathematical certainty. So when it comes to timing, and it sounds like you've been investing for a bit, so you've probably seen the highest of a high market, and of course now we're heading into a correction. What can we tell people about timing? What kind of properties should they be looking at? I mean, I know everybody likes to flip. Believe me, all the television shows, it's like, I just want to flip. It's so much fun. And it is. I've done it, and I've made a lot of money doing it. But the rentals are not very glamorous. I mean, you never see a show, hey, let's go buy this duplex. It doesn't exist because it bore people to tears. But having said all that, I don't want to scare people, but it's the truth. No. But what would you say about types of properties, even within residential versus retail versus office versus industrial? Any particular favorites there?
Yes. So multifamily, I love for a whole host of reasons. And I did just buy an industrial project, so we can talk about that as well. But, folks are always going to need housing. We have a massive housing shortage in the United States. The 2008 single family home crash, because it wasn't an entire commercial crash, but really interrupted bringing new supply onto the market. And we've never caught up. So being able to supply safe, secure, wonderful housing for folks in the multifamily space is not only economically, at least in my opinion, very wise, but also gives us an opportunity to positively impact folks and provide a home, not just a house, not just an apartment. So, but to your point, I think a lot of people hear rate hikes and are we going into another single family housing crash? And multifamily and commercial real estate are quite different in terms of we hold for cash flow. We're not looking at just buying and selling or flipping, if you will, and making sure that we buy something conservatively. Our assumptions about cost, about expenses, even about hold time, if we're conservative there and we really do the right thing and buy at a great cost basis, we can weather almost any storm. So we can get into that if you would like, but that's really my humble opinion there.
Yeah, well, I agree with you 100%. My first property I bought January 1986. And this was back, the interest rates were still high, not like it was in the late 70s and early 80s, but they were still really up there. I mean, 12, 13%. And so we assumed the mortgage. It was a VA mortgage. And we actually had 3 mortgages on the property. And we rented out the other 2 bedrooms. So my college roommate and I bought it together. His name's Socrates. His dad, Greek immigrant, taught us how to fish, the whole 9 yards. And so our monthly outlay was like $50 because the other guy's rents paid everything. And then from there, I went on to buy, small multifamily and eventually big multifamily. What I learned was this. Number one, people always need a place to live. And in a recession, there are going to be fewer buyers. So those people end up becoming renters. And they want to be good renters. They want to, keep their credit score up. They want to improve their credit. They want to eventually get their own home when interest rates drop a little bit. So what we found out was if you own decent properties, in a recession, we actually were able to raise rents on the better properties because of the sheer demand. There was just such a shortage, Now, on the lower end properties, we had some of those, unfortunately, too. And we basically held our own in the low end. But basically, B grade properties, guys. I mean, you'll see in this correction here, you'll raise rents because of the supply and demand. When you have more demand and supply, rates go up. So I agree 100%. I dabbled in other things like beauty shops and garages and all storage and all kinds of things. At the end of the day, it was the multifamily residential that built my portfolio, allowed me to do other things. It was the foundation upon which I launched other businesses. But let's talk about your business. So I'm gathering you're syndicating yourself now, and if we could kind of describe to people actually what is syndication. A lot of people probably know, but I'm sure we've got some new folks that are really wondering what is syndication.
It's a great question. And it's a question I had about 10 years ago. I had no idea that something like this existed. I thought people that bought large apartment complexes were these wealthy, Donald Trump types that had millions upon millions of dollars to sink into these properties. But thankfully, we have the ability to essentially pool our money together. And again, it's highly regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission, which I think is great. And we can pool our funds and buy a property together. And we have folks that are limited partners that simply invest and collect checks. And then we have the active people like myself, the general partners that are responsible for asset managing and making sure we get the returns that we're looking for, while also having a positive impact on the community and making our residents feel loved and cared for.
I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for participating in the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. Also wanted to let you know that the book Global Investor Agent is officially out in print and in Kindle on Amazon. You can get it by clicking on the link right here. If you are an agent, definitely grab yourself a copy. This book, guys, was not just written by me. I also included 8 other investor agents from around the country. And I didn't just handpick them. I literally opened it up to the entire audience, and it was first come, first serve. So you're going to get feedback from brand new agents all the way up to top 25 team leaders, some on my team, some are not on my team, with valuable insight and instructions and guidance and actual checklists to follow to not just survive but thrive in this market. I know you're looking for that advantage, and this is it. By the way, if you are an investor, grab a copy for your agent. And for everybody, all profits from the sale of the book, Kindle and print, all go to the Healing House Foundation, 100%. Thank you for doing that too, guys. Let's get back to the show. Nice. So,
yes.
All right. Now, on the management side, this is another interesting thing, because it's there's really 2 parts to run a real estate. I mean, like if there's many more parts than 2, believe me, but fundamentally there's the acquisition side, then there's the management side. So you want to buy right, but at the same time, you have to manage to profit. You can't, it's not like a stock or a bond. You just buy it and let it sit and wait. You need this thing you need to pay attention to. So how do you handle the management part? I guess you hire managers wherever you have properties, and I don't know, but tell us a little bit like that. How do you actually manage the managers if you're in California and the properties in Tennessee,
Yes. Well, I've got great business partners. This is a team sport, so it's not just me. I've got amazing business partners on the ground where we purchase, but also, to your point, property management companies that we have long-standing relationships with that hold our same values and ethics. And as they operate our properties, do renovations if appropriate, they manage for us. And of course, we meet with them sometimes weekly, sometimes even more than that, depending upon what's going on with the property, and make sure all of our activities and our goals and our business plans are all aligned and being implemented so we can get those returns for our investors. So they're an incredibly important part of the team and folks that we keep very close tabs on and develop very strong relationships with.
Okay. All right. You just made me think of something else. That's part of what you do as a general partner. And that sounds like the role you're playing now. But how does someone let's say someone was doing this. Let's say you have a syndication you're working on right now, and it's another big property in Tennessee. How does that actually? Obviously, there's SEC rules you have to follow as far as how you form that. But for someone who wants to be passive like you initially, how do they go from doing that to doing what you're doing now, which is a general partner?
Yes. There's a lot of education and mentorship that I personally went through to make that transition. I tend to be a bit more conservative than most. So making sure I really understood kind of those unknown unknowns, if you will. What do I not know that I need to understand? And mentorship from other people that were doing what I wanted to do as a general partner and as an active person in the multifamily space. Those were people that I sought out, and I had intentional mentorship and coaching from for several years prior to getting in this space. So it was it took a bit. I'll be honest. It's not something that just happens overnight to go from a limited partner to a general partner and active person. But it was a great journey.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. I think education is really two parts. Seems like everything I'm saying today is two parts, but we all have to read and study. We've got to listen to podcasts. We've got to read books. We've got to watch videos, go to lectures, go to events, things like that. But implementing is really that hands-on experience. I think just learning while you're on the passive side, you're close enough to observe all the moving parts and what people are doing and how they're doing it and things like that. So I appreciate you sharing that. And now, by the way, as far as the how, when it comes to the properties, we talked about Tennessee, Alabama. You mentioned there's some tools you use. So when it comes to choosing those right markets, it's not just the state. Like Huntsville is a specific market. Are there certain tools, publications you can share with people just to help them get started understanding how do you know that Pigeon Forge, Tennessee is a great area to be? I mean, that just sounds like us, like a little country town,
Yes, I love this. This is such a fun treasure hunt, in my opinion, because there are always different markets popping up that are exciting to invest in. So I do start at the state level because state legislation and state rules can influence things on the local level. So understanding, is this a business-friendly state? Are they really looking to attract business and grow? Are the laws for landlords and tenants fair? I'm not looking to take advantage of people. I don't think your listeners are either. But, some sort of fair and balance where, we're all in an agreement in terms of how the relationship works between tenant and landlord. And then if the state kind of passes that initial test about rules and regulations and business friendly, then yes, I dive in by looking at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS.gov. What's the latest migration pattern? Are people leaving the area? Are they coming? Are they going? Obviously, if they're leaving, those are generally less renters that will not favor an investment. Where's the job growth happening? Are there jobs locating to the area? And I think many of us may have heard of the multiplier effect, where for every one job that's announced, typically there are 3, 4, even 5 that may come as kind of the supplement there, and that magnifying effect of the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, as they say. Even calling up the local chamber of commerce or economic development committee to understand what's in the works. So that may not necessarily be on their website, but giving them a ring. Every area has that to really get to know what may be coming down the pike there. So BLS is one. Obviously, looking at the Federal Reserve's unemployment statistics. So is this an area that's weathered the recession or weathered past recessions well? What's going on right now? How is their COVID recovery gone from the past 2 years of some economic struggle? And then another website is datausa.io. It's such a great free website that will tell you a whole host of things. But one of my favorite data points is they'll give you an idea of what industries employers are in a given area. So are we looking at a kind of a one-trick pony town that's mostly tourism based that may be really hard hit during an economic downturn? Or are we looking at an area like Huntsville, Alabama that has, to your point, military, science and technology jobs, manufacturing jobs? Is there kind of a wide breadth of diversity there? So those are some of the websites and resources that we use to really get a pulse on what's going on in an area, what might be a good place to invest.
Yeah, I love datausa.io. We use that too. And and you mentioned too the having more than not just being a one-trick pony, but so our rule of thumb is if you can have representation from 3 major industries, you're probably in a good area. And the most probably the ones people may think of most are like high tech, high finance, higher education, strong medicine, like a lot of teaching colleges, medical teaching colleges, things like that. And they're all right. I mean, my thing is that there could be 5 of them, but if I can have 3 of them there, like in Huntsville, Alabama, you've got science, technology, you've got military, and you've got manufacturing, like you said, automobile manufacturing. I mean, that's pretty stable, guys,
Yes.
So any case, you mentioned early on, with cystic fibrosis and, how you started off in life and the fact that you've been able to perform, grow, develop as a person, a professional, in spite of that, you're kind of carrying that weight. So it bought you that freedom. It gave you this gave you the freedom to be able to work from home. You realize early on, hey, I don't know if I can have like a regular job, but something like this would allow me to work at home. What are some of the other freedoms in your mind has this bought you? Being in syndication and investing yourself. I mean, obviously, being able to work from home is a great freedom, but I'm sure there's got to be others, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we do talk a lot about those 5 freedoms. To your point, freedom of being able to spend time as we wish. My husband is actually from East Los Angeles, an area that's pretty economically disadvantaged. And we've really committed ourselves both in time and financially to be able to give to after school programs that he actually benefited from many years ago to invest in the future generation. So this freedom of contribution, whether it's time, whether it's finances, it's really been a huge gift to us and brought lots of meaning to our life. Aside from, obviously, we've been able to make a good living and help our investors build their portfolio and their legacy. So that freedom of contribution is incredibly important. And then the freedom of association. So we get to choose who we work with. My business partners, my investors, these are all very intentional relationships with people that are like-minded. I don't have to work with folks that are slumlords or property managers that think, we got to squeeze every cent out of our residents, no matter what, no matter how that impacts them, or investors that believe in the same vision we do of making money while still caring for families. So that freedom as well, to be around people that believe in the same thing that we do and value the same things we do. It's also been an enormous gift from being in this space.
Yeah. Well, it's freedom of contribution, freedom of association, and I'm sure a little bit of financial freedom in there too. Like you said, you get compensated, and really the freedom to work from home and be. I love, one of the things about the pandemic is it brought people back home, and I think it brought families back together in a traditional way where you really were in contact with each other. Because remember, for decades, mom and dad both went off to work. In most cases, that was very rare that one of the parents get to stay home. Come home, eat supper, get the homework done, and get to bed. It's like a grind. I mean, oh my gosh, just day in, day out. And here, when you work from home, you know what? You can take a break at lunch and have lunch with your loved ones.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Or go on vacation and still have your business function and your money work for you. Geographic freedom, right?
Yep.
It's incredible.
Geographic freedom. I love it. Well, okay. Well, listen to this. I know we're getting close on time, but we haven't even talked about your business. I mean, directly. So now, do you have opportunities regularly for people to participate with you? I mean, you're obviously successful and you're authentic, genuine, trustworthy. I mean, everything that people look for in a business partner. But can people participate with you on upcoming syndications? And if so, how do they? I mean, the website, anything you can share, contact information. If we can talk about that a little bit in a minute, that'd be awesome.
Of course. Thank you. Yes, we're always looking for folks who want to invest alongside of us. Our website is sylviscapital.com. And if you throw a backslash after that and say webinar, you can learn a bit more detail about how we think through these types of investments and type of folks that may be interested in benefiting from investing alongside of us. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, my goal every day is to provide data and information that's helpful to folks that are learning the industry or even actively participating in it. So you can find me there as well.
Okay, so on LinkedIn, they just search for Amy Sylvis. Her name is
Amy Sylvis. Spot on. Yes.
So guys, if you're driving, don't write this down. Just when you get home, pull up the podcast, and you can get it from the podcast notes. It's Amy, just like it sounds, AMY, and Sylvis, SYLVIS. Okay, so you got that. Now let's go website. Come on, link sylviscapital.com. SYLVIS capital.com. Okay, perfect. Oh wow, it says you got a lot. 654 apartment units, 208,000 square feet flex industrial. You guys, well, that's great. Holy smokes. So congratulations, by the way. So
Thank you. Yeah. It's really an honor. It is.
Yeah. Well, it's an honor to have you here too. And for everybody listening, I think I speak for a lot of people when I say thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing your time and energy with us and your experience, your life story, and some valuable tips, where to invest, some tools you use and know how to where to invest. and the fact that they can reach out to you and participate. And I think I'm going to be doing that too come wintertime here. So we've been saving, and I was a little bit too early. I started selling some of my older assets back a few years ago, and feeling we're at the top of the market. I could just sense it. I mean, I've been through it 5 times. And
Yes.
Sure enough, here we are. It's just a little bit too early. But the good news is I have no debt. I'm on a cash basis. So I'm ready to, I'm an ideal partner for you.
Incredible. Yes, your wisdom and experience is amazing. I love hearing that you've been able to utilize that, and now you're well positioned to continue forward.
Absolutely. And there's my personal thing is this is affordable housing. I mean, the last recession, we needed rentals. Right now, guys, we need affordable housing. And when I tell people, look, don't shun it. Instead of trying to fight things and push the boulder uphill, just look and see what's needed. What do people need and want, and help provide it. I promise you, you're gonna profit. There'll be programs coming out, grants, tax incentives, things like that, to help us produce more affordable housing. We need it. Why just go for it? Be part of it. So thank you again, Amy, for doing this, and thank you for everybody listening. We appreciate you. God bless you and your families. Remember, if you could please leave a great review for this. All right, this has been an awesome podcast. So just look for Amy Sylvis in the podcast list, iTunes, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to them. Just leave a good review, because that's the juice that makes the podcast world go around. And while you're out there, go to sylviscapital.com, right? And before you leave the internet, go to globalinvestoragent.com. Particularly, I'm going to speak to you agents right now. If you click on the Learn More button, guys, this is the time of the market where you need a competitive advantage. And this is the way to do it. Oh my gosh, it's not that complicated. We need realtors in investing, just what we need for buying our own homes. So click on the Learn More button, learn how to not just survive, but thrive. Thrive in this market. I promise you will make more money with investors. I'm living proof, okay? In any case, enough of that for a plug. You guys take care of yourselves, and we will see you on the next Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cash Flow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.